Alrighty, Colts Nation, we are back, and today we are talking all about defense. Now, I have not spoken about this defense in depth in a pretty meaningful period of time, probably close to 2 months, I'd say. And despite the fact that Shaquille Leonard is in the concussion protocol, this was not his back. This was not the calf or whatever he was talking about from the nerve damage. So these are not the injury reports we're accustomed to seeing, and that is a bit more clarity on his status than we had, let's say, the last time I talked about this defense. And dare I say, I may have been wrong about Shaquille Leonard's health going into the season. I feel like it's pretty safe to say that even if not week 1, we can expect Shaquille Leonard to be giving the Colts some meaningful reps early in the season. And I want to talk about today whether or not that changes the outlook for this defense. I mean, after all, we didn't have Anthony Richardson start the preseason game this past weekend. There was a lot of talk about that. And that's usually the news around these parts when you're talking about the Indianapolis Colts. And other than Anthony Richardson, I mean, in the past 24 hours, I just can't think of any meaningful news around the Indianapolis Colts that we have seen. Can you guys think of anything at all? No, I've got nothing. So today, what we're going to be talking about is a little bit of the Shaquille Leonard thing. I want to discuss Gus Bradley's defensive philosophy, of course, to the best of my ability. I'm no guru. And then what is required of the guys that we have to make it work. So it's going to end up turning into a kind of a breakdown of the personnel, and I'm just going to try my best to shed some light on this defense, and we will just see where it goes from there. So without further ado, why not get into it? But before I do, always have to introduce myself. You know what it is. My name is Justin. You are listening to the Ride in the Bench Coltscast. If this is your first time here, welcome. If this is your second time here, welcome back. If this is your 5th time here, why the heck have you not subscribed yet? Now's the time. If nothing else, all I ask of you is to shoot this video a like if at any point you are enjoying it. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. But most importantly, just enjoy the episode, and please drop a comment on your opinions on any piece of this, whatever it may be. Maybe something I say is wrong. Maybe something I say is right. Maybe you think I'm doing a good job. Maybe you think I'm doing a bad job. I read all the comments. I think a lot of you who have been here know that. But that, I would say, is probably all of the intro. So why don't we start right now just by talking about Gus Bradley's scheme a little bit. And there might be people that know significantly more about this than I do. I'm welcome to listen to you, but I just want to start by laying out to you what we're looking at, because I know there's people of all different, levels of knowledge of football that are listening right now. There's some who are incredibly knowledgeable and maybe some who are just kind of learning about it right now. So I'm going to give you kind of the 101s of what we're looking at here with Gus Bradley. So Gus Bradley runs a 4-3 defense. Now, what does that mean? So, and I apologize for those of you that know this. It'd be redundant. You can skip past it if you really want to. But there are 2 primary defenses in the NFL. You have a 4-3 defense and you have a 3-4 defense. And those are just referencing the amount of linemen you have down as opposed to linebackers. So a 4-3, you're going to have 4 down linemen. A 3-4, you're going to have 3 down linemen. And then obviously the 3 linebackers in the 4-3 and then the 4 linebackers in the 3-4. Now, in the 4-3, those linebackers are considered to be like tacklers and pass coverage type of guys. As compared to a 3-4, you have 2 guys that could kind of rush off the edge, and then you have 2 guys in the middle that are filling that pass coverage role and that, tackling type role. Not that everyone doesn't need to tackle. Point being is everyone has kind of priorities in terms of what their role is on the team. And for those of you who know, before Gus Bradley, we did have Matt Eberflus, now head coach of the Chicago Bears, and the schemes that him and Bradley run are to some degree similar in the fact that they don't blitz very often. They're predicated on effort, swarming the ball, creating turnovers, and really just kind of playing a zone defense and letting that defensive line get the pressure as opposed to having the blitz to create it, just having as many guys in coverage as possible. Now, the primary difference between the Matt Eberflus defense and the Gus Bradley defense would be the fact that Matt Eberflus is running a cover 2 zone and Gus Bradley is running a cover 3 zone. Now, why you would run a cover 2 versus a cover 3 mostly depends on the types of passes you're comfortable letting up, because the reality of a zone defense in the NFL is that someone is always going to be open if the quarterback has enough time. That's just the nature of it. The zone is to simply just kind of be in the way and hope to get some pressure. Now, a cover two, that two is referring to two deep safeties. So you're kind of going to have two safeties up top covering the deep ball, and then you have the corners on the outside kind of covering the shallow area, those short hitches, those flats, and then maybe over the course of the game, as teams start to expose the area behind those corners that is generally open in the cover two defense, maybe you start to see some of those corners go back. So if I could try to paint a picture on the screen, you have a safety here and you have a safety here. And then you have corners down here, meaning that these corners over here, by corners, I mean like corner routes from the wide receiver. I hope I'm doing a great job of this, or at least a halfway decent job. You have this space on the outside hash between the safeties and the corners, in theory, that would be open. Now, a cover three, on the other hand, has three deep safeties in the corners, generally taking a little bit more depth. So a cover two is really going to try to force you to attack the outside over there and try to get the ball down the field a little bit more and hope to force you into a turnover, as opposed to a cover three, which is what Gus Bradley's running, which is a little bit more about giving the stuff underneath and just letting them chop you up and just making good tackles. Keep everything in front of you, come up, make a play, bend, don't break type of defense. Is that making sense? If not, I apologize. I tried my best. Now, again, as I was saying about the zone, now that we have this in place, you kind of have somewhat of an understanding, to the best I was able to explain it, of what we're trying to do. Now we kind of have to look at what we have here. So again, as I was saying, Gus Bradley's defense, we need guys who are going to be able to cover and have good instincts. You need guys who are going to be able to come up and make a tackle. Now, of course, everyone needs to tackle. Everyone needs to cover. I'm just kind of highlighting priorities here, if that makes any sort of sense. The defensive line, we're going to rely on them to get pressure. The reason we're playing that 4-3 as opposed to that 3-4 is in hopes of stopping the inside run. And, maybe we don't prioritize those plays to the outside as much. Linebackers are going to have to cover, and they're going to have to tackle. That's what we're looking at. So given now we understand all of the roles, I want to just kind of go into each position and kind of look at where we're at as a team and how confident I am that the personnel that we have in place is going to get the job done. Now, I want to start with the defensive line, mostly because it's the unit that I am most excited about for these Indianapolis Colts. If we're looking to create pressure and we're looking to stop the run, I just feel like we have a lot of guys here. Now, some of them are unproven, but the potential for this defensive line to be big time, like big time, is there. And I do think it's a factor that a lot of people aren't considering when they're looking at this Colts defense. And I'm not just being optimistic for the sake of it. I'll tell the truth about the defense when the time comes, because generally speaking, I'm mostly concerned about the Colts defense. But this defensive line can really just blow a hole in that entire theory, because you look at DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart to start. There is no arguing them outside of the top 5 defensive tackle units in football. I would argue, probably because I'm a Colts fan, that they are the absolute best. I mean, DeForest Buckner is an absolute freak, both against the run and as a pass rusher, particularly from the defensive tackle position. Now, he's not Von Miller. He's not Khalil Mack. Maybe he's not even Aaron Donald in terms of a pass rush. But as far as defensive tackles go, DeForest Buckner's about as good as it gets. And Grover Stewart is an absolute monster against the run. I mean, there are just stretches of games where he absolutely takes the entire thing over. There's 3-4 straight plays, all Grover, all day. Do you guys see that fly right there? That thing is distracting the hell out of me. I must smell bad. So really the guys we have to look at on this defensive line that need to step up, because we know what we're getting out of defensive tackles, for me, are Dio and Dangbo and Kwity Paye. Now, this is no secret, but these are two guys right here that if they can provide enough of a rush on the outside, and then you have guys like Samson Ebukam, who we brought in, Al-Qadim Muhammad, someone that we just brought back, to me, in his time in preseason, has looked pretty good. I don't want to sleep on what he brings to the table, but then you have Tyquan Lewis, the oft-injured but very talented, right? Titus Leo, who we drafted. Adebawore, who we drafted. These are a lot of guys, to me, that I think all supplemented together. Sure, maybe we don't have that one name, that Bosa brother, that Khalil Mack, that, stop playing the name game. You get my point. We may not have that one guy unless Kwity Paye or Dio grows into it. But I think we have a collection of guys that we could rotate on the field that can all be effective, and most importantly, keep us fresh. So maybe our best players come the fourth quarter aren't completely gassed on the defensive side of the ball, at least up front. So this defensive line for me, in terms of what we're trying to do, which is not going to blitz, we're going to rely just on these four for the most part that we have up front. I love it. I'll be honest, this defensive line, I'm very, very, very excited about right now. We'll see if after the first month of the season, I have a complete change of tune. Now, the linebackers, and I titled this video around Shaquille Leonard, so it's about time I get here. When, or rather if, let me collect my thoughts. If Shaquille Leonard's healthy for this team, you look at him, who obviously, what he forced? 12 turnovers by himself in a season, it was an insane number of turnovers that he forced. You have him, Zaire Franklin, and EJ Speed, and now maybe you get a Grant Stewart to come in and play well. You get a Sagon Olabi. Hopefully he gets better from that concussion. You have him come in and play well at the linebacker position. These are 5 guys for me that I think can do well enough at linebacker, particularly our starters. Now, this is, of course, injuries aside, for the most part, other than Shaquille Leonard, the only one who I've brought up the injury for obvious reasons. Right there, that starting unit of Shaquille Leonard, Zaire Franklin, and EJ Speed, for me, looks really good. I'm expecting huge things out of EJ Speed. He's been a menace in training camp. One of the only days I was there, he literally picked off Gardner Minshew in the red zone 2 minutes. Tell me how often an outside linebacker does that. That was awesome to see. So actually, despite all of the concerns, when you look at the first 2 levels of this defense, being the defensive line and the linebackers, for me, I can't lie, I don't feel too bad. It's really the secondary where I start to get concerned. Now, do I start at the safeties? Do I start at the corners? I'll figure it out. Let's start with the safeties, I guess, because for me, one of the moves that the Colts did this offseason, I think there was a lot of talk about Bobby Okereke and how he left and how the Colts let him go and they shouldn't have done that. A move that I thought really went under the radar as one that could have damaged this team was letting go of Rodney McLeod. I mean, he really gave us some excellent, excellent work last year. And when you look at how young this position is for us, he's a guy that I think would have really been beneficial to us, particularly as we've seen Blackman. We don't know fully how healthy he's going to stay. You can't bet on an injury, but at the same time, he's been on and off the field. He's been in and out of training camp. Rodney Thomas finds his way back in. The closest thing we have to a veteran in this Colts secondary is Mike Mitchell, who played for us X amount of years ago and is now coaching. He's still kind of that age where he could relate to the players. He's not an old head yet. Mike Mitchell is the veteran of the Colts safety group. Other than that, you look at Nick Cross, Trevor Dembo, 2 guys that I thought gave really, really, really good work. For me, maybe even the highlights of preseason week 2 were how good both of them played. If Nick Cross can play like that, where he is just reacting, or rather he's just going, playing, not thinking, just swarming the ball, not thinking too much, just going in there and making a hit. His tape at Maryland was that of an excellent instinct type of tackler who could just come up, make a play, fly at you. Short tackler, obviously has to work on the coverage end of things, but that'll be a work in progress, and hopefully they coach him up. Gus Bradley, obviously, say what you want about him, incredibly respected in that league, and we got to trust the staff that's in place. Nick Cross gave some very, very good work in that preseason game, and just really got me way more optimistic about this safety group. Trevor Dembo looking solid as well. Nice little depth piece, a guy that was on the team last year coming into his own once more this year. So you look at Rodney Thomas, Julian Blackman, Nick Cross, Trevor Dembo. Is that the greatest, most proven group of safeties I've ever seen in my entire life? No. But is it one that I could be positive about and try to get behind? Absolutely. Now, the corner room, on the other hand, this is where things get a little interesting, particularly if the pass rush is not consistent. Now, if it is, we can make a lot of guys look good. But you look at what we have right now. Kenny Moore out of the slot. Now, off year for Kenny last year, but when you listen to Shane Steichen talk about Kenny Moore, you do get the sense that he just has a lot of respect around the league. I mean, obviously, Shane Steichen isn't going to sit there and call him a scrub and say he's average. But when asked about Kenny Moore, you go ahead and look up and see exactly what Shane Steichen has to say. I mean, he has a tremendous amount of respect for what he brings to the table. Josh Downs, a slot specialist, looks at Kenny Moore and says, not for anything. This guy, iron sharpening iron. I mean, it is awesome to play against Kenny Moore. So we have Kenny Moore there in the slot. I'm optimistic about that. The question is, what the heck are we going to do on the outside? Particularly if we're going to play a zone defense. That requires a lot more mental reps, and our team is young. If you're going to play man coverage, that's one thing, because it's very simple. Just look at your guy, line up with them and cover them. You take some of the thinking out of it. It's a zone defense where the corners have to start communicating to the safeties and the linebackers and passing people off and figuring out when exactly they're going to stay in place, when they're going to crash down, when they're going to drop back. There's a lot of moving parts in a zone defense, and when you have a unit as young as ours, we're bound to have growing pains. Now, Juju Brents is a guy that we drafted in the second round, and Jalen Jones is a guy we drafted in the seventh. You've been watching preseason, and some of you have been at training camp. I want you to tell me right now, and I mean no shade at all, I mean no disrespect to Juju Brents. I certainly don't want to come at him. He missed time. Remember, recovering from the wrist surgery, he only returned to training camp at the end of August. He basically had a week of practice and was thrown right out there. He, to me, looks a step behind. You tell me who you think right now is better between Jalen Jones and between Juju Brents. Who gives us a better chance to win on the outside right now at the cornerback position? Because if you ask me, it has to be Jalen Jones, and I would love that to be a compliment to Jalen Jones, and I would love that not to be a diss towards Juju Brents. What it really is putting in perspective kind of the concerns that we should have about this secondary. People say a lot of things about Chris Ballard. I think he gets far too much flack for a number of reasons, probably an episode for another day. Actually, one of my early episodes was maybe my longest episode to date. I spoke about it. If you want to go back into the archives and try to find it. This secondary right here has the potential to struggle so much that I'll have no choice but to look at Chris Ballard, and I'm one of his biggest defenders. We have the only guy that we can trust outside of Kenny Moore is Darrell Baker Jr., who's been in the league 1 year and not for anything. I don't even know what round he was drafted in, no disrespect, but I know he wasn't like a first rounder or anything like that. Darrell Baker Jr., that's our guy. Now, he's looked pretty good, but when Darrell Baker Jr. is your top outside corner, you might just have a problem. Now, of course, things can change and we could get proven wrong. Again, we have guys at Darius Rush we drafted who I hadn't mentioned. Did the news come out on his injury yet? Did I miss it, guys? Did I miss on his injury? I don't know. I don't know the severity of Darius Rush's injury right now. Someone let me know in the comments. But you have him, Dallas Flowers, Juju Brents, who really looks like he's struggling. And again, I don't want to just pile on him, but I can only tell you the truth. Juju Brents looks like he's struggling. Tony Brown, Darrell Baker Jr., I don't know who I said and didn't say. The point being is that if there's a position to worry about, it's this corner group. This pass rush this year is gonna have to make it happen. And that does mean Gus Bradley. And Gus Bradley's on record saying this because obviously he's not going to say, I literally never blitz. No one blitzes less than me. He'll never say that, even though everyone knows it. He's going to have to be able to adjust and blitz when he feels like he's had to or has to. And he's been on record saying that he's malleable on that front and you have to change it for the personnel. I certainly haven't seen it, man. But if we are not able to get pressure, I mean, we're going to get 40 burgers dropped on us all season. That's just the name of the game. And I suppose the silver lining and how I'm going to try to wrap up this episode on a positive front is the fact that the Colts defensive line has potential to really be a standout, breakout unit here. I actually think they have the potential to be inside of the top 10 pass rushing units in all of football. That, of course, is a little optimistic, and I will do some sort of predictions episode slightly closer to the season. But spoiler alert, if you're at this point in the video, you get spoilers. That is going to be one for me. I'm really, really high on this defensive front, and realistically, it is the only thing that can save this Indianapolis Colts defense from having a very, very tough time this year. So hopefully that was a concise episode. That was a decent episode. Hopefully you learned something, or at least were entertained. If you were entertained, by the way, and if you did learn something, now's the time to like, now's the time to subscribe, and now is the time for me to thank you for making it to the end of the episode. My name is Justin. This right here will always be, maybe, the Riding the Bench Colts cast. Until next time, go Colts.